So Esther Perel has a lot of good things to say about how to work with affairs. She has a TED Talk that is based on her book, The State of Affairs. She has, no, actually, both of those TED Talks were from Mating in Captivity, her first book, I think, in 2007. And one of the TED Talks was about closeness and separateness, and one of them is about managing affairs. As we're going through this, I'm aware that the pornography issue, the affairs issue, these are enormous issues for some clients, and we are just kind of grazing the surface here of what you might do in terms of 10, 20 sessions with clients that are looking at these issues. So this is really a starting point. Let's not forget that. There is a lot of other information that can be assimilated into this, and we'll probably have more workshops that are able to devote more time to each of these issues a bit more specifically. So for Rachel and Danny, let's say that we have helped them understand a little bit more about their relationship to pornography, their relationship to each other, how they understand affairs and betrayal, and we've gotten them out of acute distress around those issues. The next phase of working with them, because we've only all talked about the things that they don't like or that they don't want, the porn, the affairs. Now we have to move into talking about, what do you want? What do you like? What would you actually want to do with each other if you want to do anything? And that brings us into talking more about love maps, arousal templates, and consent. So the following video is from Al Vernaccio. It's a TED Talk, and he's talking about changing the metaphor of sexuality from baseball to pizza. And he does it in a very humorous way. And I will, send this to clients, or I will describe this process with clients. And then I'll talk about how I try to use the pizza as an intervention then with clients.
I'd like to talk to you today about a whole new way to think about sexual activity and sexuality education by comparison. If you talk to someone today in America about sexual activity, you'll find pretty soon you're not just talking about sexual activity, you're also talking about baseball. Because baseball is the dominant cultural metaphor that Americans use to think about and talk about sexual activity. And we know that because there's all this language in English that seems to be talking about baseball, but that's really talking about sexual activity. So for example, it could be a pitcher or a catcher, and that corresponds to whether you perform a sexual act or receive a sexual act. Of course, there are the bases, which refer to specific sexual activities that happen in a very specific order, ultimately resulting in us scoring a run or hitting a home run, which is usually having vaginal intercourse to the point of orgasm, at least for the guy. You can strike out, which means you don't get to have any sexual activity. And if you're a bench warmer, you might be a virgin or somebody for whom whatever reason isn't in the game, maybe because of your age or because of your ability or because of your skill set. A bat's a penis, and a nappy dugout is a vulva or a vagina. A glove or a catcher's mitt is a condom. A switch hitter is a bisexual person, and we gay and lesbian folks play for the other team. And then there's this one. If there's grass on the field, play ball. And that usually refers to if a young person, specifically often a young woman, is old enough to have pubic hair, she's old enough to have sex with. This baseball model is incredibly problematic. It's sexist, it's heterosexist, it's competitive, it's goal-directed, and it can't result in healthy sexuality developing in young people or in adults. So we need a new model. I'm here today to offer you that new model, and it's based on pizza. Now, pizza is something that is universally understood and that most people associate with a positive experience. So let's do this. Let's take baseball and pizza and compare it when talking about three aspects of sexual activity: the trigger for sexual activity, what happens during sexual activity, and the expected outcome of sexual activity. So, when do you play baseball? You play baseball when it's baseball season and when there's a game on the schedule. It's not exactly your choice. So if it's prom night or a wedding night or at a party or if our parents aren't home, hey, it's just batter up. Can you imagine saying to your coach, not really feeling it today. I think I'll sit this game out. That's just not the way it happens. And when you get together to play baseball, immediately you're with two opposing teams. One playing offense, one playing defense. Somebody's trying to move deeper into the field. That's usually assigned to the boys. Somebody's trying to defend people moving into the field. That's often given to the girl. It's competitive. We're not playing with each other. We're playing against each other. And when you show up to play baseball, nobody needs to talk about what we're going to do or how this baseball game might be good for us. Everybody knows the rules. You just take your position and play the game. But when do you have pizza? Well, you have pizza when you're hungry for pizza. It starts with an internal sense, an internal desire or a need. I could go for some pizza. And because it's an internal desire, we actually have some sense of control over that. I can decide that I'm hungry, but know that it's not a great time to eat. And then when we get together with someone for pizza, we're not competing with them. We're looking for an experience that both of us will share that's satisfying for both of us. And when you get together for pizza with somebody, what's the first thing you do? You talk about it. You talk about what you want. You talk about what you like. You may even negotiate. How do you feel about pepperoni? Not so much. I'm kind of a mushroom guy myself. Well, maybe we can go half and half. And even if you've had pizza with somebody for a very long time, don't you still say things like, should we get the usual? Or maybe something a little more adventurous. Okay, so when you're playing baseball, so if we talk about during sexual activity, when you're playing baseball, you're just supposed to round the bases in the proper order, one at a time. You can't hit the ball and run to right field. That doesn't work. And you also can't get to second base and say, I like it here. I'm going to stay here. No. And also, of course, with baseball, there's like the specific equipment and a specific skill set. Not everybody can play baseball. It's pretty exclusive. Okay, but what about pizza? When we're trying to figure out what's good for pizza, isn't it all about what's our pleasure? There are a million different kinds of pizza. There's a million different toppings. There's a million different ways to eat pizza. And none of them are wrong. They're different. And in this case, difference is good because that's going to increase the chance that we're having a satisfying experience. And lastly, what's the expected outcome of baseball? Well, in baseball, you play to win. You score as many runs as you can. There's always a winner in baseball, and that means there's always a loser in baseball. But what about pizza? Well, in pizza, there's no winning. How do you win pizza? You don't. But you do look for, are we satisfied? And sometimes that can be different amounts over different times or with different people or in different days. And we get to decide when we feel satisfied. If we're still hungry, we might have some more. If you eat too much, though, you just feel gross. So what if we could take this pizza model and overlay it on top of sexuality education? A lot of sexuality education that happens today is so influenced by the baseball model, and it sets up education that can't help but produce unhealthy sexuality in young people. And those young people become older people. But if we could create sexuality education that was more like pizza, we could create education that invites people to think about their own desires, to make deliberate decisions about what they want, to talk about it with their partners, and to ultimately look for not some external outcome, but for what feels satisfying. And we get to decide that. You may have noticed in the baseball and pizza comparison, under the baseball, it's all commands. They're all exclamation points. But under the pizza model, they're questions. And who gets to answer those questions? You do. I do. So remember, when we're thinking about sexuality education and sexual activity, baseball, you're out. Pizza is the way to think about healthy, satisfying sexual activity and good comprehensive sexuality education. Thank you very much for your time.
So just before we move into the CPR model here, how I operationalize that concept of pizza with clients is we might watch the video or I explain it to them. And then I say, so what do you feel like about having pizza every night together? Or at least talking about having pizza every night. And I instruct them that pizza is code for connection, not sex. Sex could be part of the connection, but it doesn't have to be. And we can still have connection without adding the sexual component. And that can be really important for some couples, where if it's not intercourse, nothing happens. And that they might be very frustrated then because it's kind of a black or white, all or none, intercourse or nothing. And negotiating pizza toppings helps them to explore what else other than intercourse might be mutually satisfying for them. So I'll say, you need to talk about what you might want for pizza every night. And you're starting with asking yourself, what do I feel like? How was my day today? What's my mood like? What's my body feeling like? How alert am I? Or how tired am I? And from that, what does that mean for me in terms of connection? What my body would really enjoy, what my brain would really like to see or hear or feel. And so you have to think about what you want first, and then you can express it to the other person. And then they're also forced to do the same thing, where they're thinking about what they like and what they don't like, and then being able to communicate it with you. So it's a very purposeful activity around increasing sexual communication and prioritizing the consent process for every time. Like, one night you might just want to hold hands while you watch TV. Okay, great. Next night, maybe intercourse. Maybe you have intercourse only 1 out of every 20 sexual activity experiences that you share together. And it helps to be able to construct what's on the menu tonight. What are we going to do with this tonight? How can we make this a mutually satisfying experience? So into this racial microaggressions response model, which is in Rachel and Danny's solutions, because we mentioned that Danny immigrated from Ghana to Canada when he was a teenager. So I want to put this in here as another way of making sure that we're honoring and respecting that there might be some cultural differences there. There might even be some cultural attitudes that we might have some discomfort with based on our cultural ideas. And so we do want to be aware of that. And this is a model that has helped me, and you might have seen it before. It's really about making sure you don't get defensive or too stressed around it, and letting your emotions get too hot. So really calming ourselves down, take some deep breaths. Okay, I don't expect that I'm always going to be perfect at this. And every time someone can say something about it, it's an opportunity for me to now learn something new. And that's the frame that is really helpful. Okay, tell me more, help me learn. I want to know more about this because I'm not embodying that right now. So I need to learn. Help me learn, and make sure that you repair. You know, it's about the relationship, and making sure that you're preserving the working alliance. Sometimes when there are microaggressions and we go through a process like this with a client, it helps to strengthen the working alliance even more than it would have been had there not been a repair that was necessary. And then to finish off for Rachel and Danny. So we talk about pornography, we talk about affairs. That helps get them out of an acute stage of distress with each other. We would want to then move them into intimacy building skills so that they can learn about what they actually want and like from each other, and also reinforce for themselves that that can be different depending on the day, depending on your mood. And so there is a wide repertoire of options for sexual activity. If they don't do that, they could be very limited by the baseball metaphor, which also kind of holds them in a very patriarchal structure around sexuality. So we want to be able to help them expand and explore, what is it that I want? I know I don't want that, but what would I actually want? Most of the time when I ask those questions, people will say, I don't know. I really don't know what I want. I've been in this sexual relationship death spiral for so long that I haven't even thought about what I want. All I know is I'm just trying to kind of keep the peace and temporarily avoid any conflict. So I'm not thinking about what I actually want or how to make this better. I'm trying to limit the damage of my partner wanting this kind of sexual experience, and maybe I don't. So some of the resources that I would recommend for Rachel and Danny or couples like this is The State of Affairs by Esther Perel. Her other book, Mating in Captivity, that was first. Hold Me Tight, if you're familiar with EFT, that is Sue Johnson's book for clients that help them learn how to have different conversations and communication patterns with each other. So we would need to use that to deal with some of the attachment anxieties that are coming up with Rachel feeling not chosen, and Danny's separateness, pornography or others being a threat to Rachel's sense of closeness in the relationship. And maybe perhaps the other way around as well, where Rachel's attempts at closeness to feel secure in the relationship are also experienced as a threat for Danny and his separateness or his independence and individuality. Then in terms of the pornography discussion, treating out of control sexual behavior. So that one is really for clinicians. They don't yet have, as far as I know, a book that's for clients to really read, but that book will help you understand a bit more about how to treat this from a sexual values perspective, a sexual health values perspective. They do a lot of group treatment as well when they're doing out of control sexual behavior. So for clients, His Porn, Her Pain by Marty Klein is a decent book. I'm going to show a video of Marty Klein in a bit, but he's a pretty well-known sex therapist, and he also spent some time in Calgary, nearby me in Edmonton. So we'll talk a bit about him, but you know his approach, you know, is very practical. And so we also have to make sure that you read these books before you ever recommend them too, because something like his porn, her pain. If you have a client that's coming in with the idea around addiction really being the main issue, that book is not going to be appropriate for them. Marty Klein is a member of ASECT and does not value the addiction world when it comes to treating sexual issues. So same thing also with some of Esther Perel's work. You can see how beautiful her language is, and that's not compatible with everybody. Some people don't really like to hear it kind of like that, or they might say it's too flowery. David Schnarch is a good alternative for that. David Schnarch is the opposite of flowery language. Unfortunately, he passed away recently as well. But David Schnarch could be another way to help clients understand some of their relational dynamics, especially around intimacy. So those books would be helpful and maybe vital for your own kind of understanding about how to help a couple like Rachel and Danny who are dealing with some issues, but probably would need a long course of treatment and assistance to help them get out of the acute distress and move into more neutrality and receptivity to then actually explore what intimacy together is going to end up looking like for them. So we've done a how do we say this? A very cursory look at how we would help Rachel and Danny through some of the big issues. This of course would be expanded quite a bit in terms of helping them, but hopefully this is a good example of how you would help a couple that's presenting like this or similarly.